Hello, dear ones. This is Bevin with Perceptive Souls, and I am a compassionate guide, a coach and mentor for intuitive empaths, conscious leaders, and light workers of the world. I am also a co-founder of the 1 Million Empaths community, which is an online global sanctuary space for deep thinkers with huge hearts who want to make a difference in our world. And welcome to your collective energy reading. Of course, these readings take place on a specific day, and yet they are universal archetypes. So whenever you stumble across this, and if the message resonates with you, then this is for you to take away at the time when you find it. My process is pretty simple. I either receive some particular theme, phrase, word, understanding in a meditative space, or when I first awaken, or when I'm walking in nature. I have been able to sense into collective energy since I was a child, and for a long time really rejected this part of myself, this gift, and maybe you can resonate with this. It just felt overwhelming to be able to feel all of these large scale global shifts and changes, even what's going on, within just an entire family system or an entire city. But when you can feel things on such a large level, I would often find myself drained and exhausted. And still I have to do some really, important radical level of self-care in order to bring this teaching through, in order to do the coaching and the teaching and the mentoring that I do. But what I decided was that if I allow that energy to flow through me, instead of be absorbed by me, if I hold myself up as a sacred mirror for what's happening in our world right now, then it actually releases all of that energy from my physical body, from my emotional center. It grounds me. And so, it might be interesting for you to discover if there's a way that you can do that as well. Today's theme is finding yourself, right? And there was a good portion of my life when I felt lost, when I felt like I didn't know who I was. I was basically a chameleon, and I was sponging and defining myself by all of the people and the environment and the collective culture around me, as opposed to really having a strong core understanding of who I am. And if you resonate with that, then you may understand this card here, where a portion of you is hidden and a portion of you is starting to peek out and say, okay, who am I? Who am I really? What's important to me? I don't know if I want myself to be seen. I spent about a decade being a really strong hermit. I had very few friends. I didn't invite people over to my home, didn't go out to social events. And this is the way I felt. I felt like I was just sort of peeking around. And I knew I wasn't shy, because when I am with people that I'm comfortable with and I feel honored and understood and accepted by, I really thrive. I have this beautiful inner circle. And it's taken me a long time to come out of this space and to be willing to do something like this, which, for example, be on camera. Or over the last 2 years, I've hosted 2 global online summits, and 60,000 people, saw my work. And so that's been a huge journey for me. And let's talk about this journey to go on a path, a vision quest, if you will, to find yourself. Because when you feel like you're hidden, when you feel like you're not seen, when you feel like you're not heard, it's like a part of your soul is missing, right? Part of your soul is missing. And there's so many sensitive people who feel like they're in this area. And actually, with the recent world events, there's so many people in our world who feel like this. There are so many people who are staying at home now and going, what's my life about? What's next for me? Why are the things that I thought were so important, they don't feel important anymore? What am I supposed to be here for? What's the meaning and the purpose? And when we do that, we come into a process of what in the shamanic tradition is called soul retrieval, right? And so I'll turn this card upright so you can see. And it's a little hard to see, but you can see clearly that there's like a cocoon here and a butterfly that's emerging, and all the colors. And you've probably heard this this metaphor, and it's actually a true story about how the butterfly emerges. Is that when the caterpillar enters the cocoon and it starts to grow the wings, and the metamorphosis is happening, it will tear just a small hole in the cocoon to start to get itself out. And if someone comes by and opens up that sac, the butterfly's wings are not strong enough to support it. Having that assistance, having that extra help actually weakens it. We actually need to go through these struggles. And I've thought about this a lot. I'm like, do we actually have to struggle in order to transform? I mean, our world is going through an immense transformation right now. And that came as of a really big, shocking, sort of health scare that's going around. And then we have the economic system on top of that. And then we have the environment, and we have all these things. And I'm like, is it always necessary for us to do that? But when the soul retrieval card is in reverse, and for those of you that aren't familiar with soul retrieval process, what it says is that when we experience any kind of trauma, whether that's what they call trauma with a capital T, something really, really difficult in your life that you hold on to, and maybe that even causes PTSD, or we have what we call a small t trauma, which is something that really hits us on an emotional level, but maybe isn't quite as devastating. A piece of our soul actually splinters off, right? There's a part of ourselves at whatever age that happened, could be childhood, could be young adulthood, could be throughout adulthood, that goes off and really does this, really, hides out. Says, I'm just gonna leave now. I'm gonna go hide out because I can't process what's happening right now. And this is a normal psychological and spiritual occurrence, right? Like sometimes our mind, our body, our spirit knows what it needs. It needs to shut down a little bit in order for us to survive and to move through something that's very, very difficult in our lives. And we've all had these particular situations, and sometimes they're chronic situations. And so that person, that 15-year-old or that 3-year-old or that 28-year-old goes and hides out, and it goes into the cocoon, right? And then when we move on into our life, we always feel like there's something missing. We feel like I'm not whole, and we seek out to fill that void with other things, whether that's relationships or food or drugs or, online video gaming, or, you name your thing, that we try to fill something inside of us that we know at some level is not there anymore. And when we go through the process of soul retrieval, and I believe that you can do your own soul retrieval, I also know that it's really important, if you are going to go through this process, that you find a shaman who has been trained in the lineage to help people with this. I mean, this is a huge thing, to enter into someone else's field and to have that container and that trust and that understanding. This is not just something you want to practice at home. And I know there are books on it, and, but I just highly encourage that if you're going to go through this soul retrieval process with a practitioner, that you find someone who is experienced and who knows what they're doing, and they can hold you, and then they can nurture you after you go through this process. But essentially, the shaman will go into a meditative trance-like state, and you would go into that state as well. And they would go and they would seek out this part of yourself that went missing, that's hiding, and invite it gently to come back into wholeness. And they would breathe it back into your body at your heart center. And you can do this work as well. I've done some soul retrieval work on and with a variety of different practitioners. It takes an awareness of the fact that something is missing. It takes us to go, wait a minute. Why do I keep, doing these same patterns, get that re-wounding of that original trauma? And we realize that a part of ourselves is missing, right? Part of ourselves is missing. And we have the ability to heal that. Our soul wants to be whole. It's meant to be whole. It's meant to be intact. And we've just done it out of self-protection. There's nothing that's going wrong here. We needed to do that. And it took time before we were ready to face that. So then we come to the blade. And the blade, when it's pointed downward, is really about being grounded, right? So this to me speaks of going in, and it's like a beautiful scalpel, like a very honed instrument, a soul instrument, if you will. And it's cutting away that old trauma and those old fears and that old sense of needing to be hidden, and realizing, okay, we can come and ground ourselves back into our soul, back into wholeness. And this is what the blade is. And it's a 6, which is, about harmony and balance. Right? So when it's upright, it's really talking about connecting into universal consciousness. And when it's downward, it's really about grounding ourselves into this earthly reality. And this is sometimes what happens when we get ready to face those things that we didn't really want to look at very much. We don't want to go through the re-wounding where we believe maybe we just can't actually survive that. We can't actually make it through that. It will overwhelm us. But what comes up next is the Jaguar, and the 2 and the 8 obviously add up to 10, which is the completion of a cycle. The Jaguar is incredibly powerful, and as this really sleek, dark, feline energy, it navigates the darkness, right? It knows the shadow world. It hangs out at night. This is what it does. And it stalks and it hunts, and it can see very, very clearly in the darkness. And so this Jaguar energy comes in if you're in this place of finding yourself, of diving into where those aspects of your soul may have gone missing, and you're reconnecting yourself back in, right? And the Jaguar can climb trees. It can slink along the ground. It's very fluid. It's very fluid, right? It knows how to move in the shadow realm, and it uses the light of the moon. You have the moon here, which is the deep seat of emotions, right? It knows how to navigate those deep-seated emotions. And sometimes this requires us to climb the mountain, to get a higher perspective, because if we stayed down, so we were grounded first by the blade and this process of soul retrieval, and the Jaguar that can move, between the ground and up into the trees and to see a higher perspective. And then when we begin to climb this mountain, we open ourselves to a higher perspective. We can start to look down and we see, okay, here's all the path that I've climbed, right? All the rocks that I've climbed over. I start to see the people in my life in a different perspective. I start to be able to look at the entire journey that I've been on and notice, wow, even during these times of difficulty, I was incredibly strong. Or here's what I learned from those situations. Here's what I took forward from that. And we begin to activate and open our third eye in our crown. because this, excuse me, this divine wisdom, it wants to find us. It wants to come in. When we are in this process of doing this inner soul searching, reconnecting ourselves back into wholeness, finding out who we are. And we look at all of these things in our life, and some of them provided a lot of contrast, as Abraham Hicks would say, and we're like, no, that's not what I want. And other things provided a higher vibration, a more resonant vibration, and we're like, yes, that's what I want, right? And when we get up here, we can actually start to see, we can contemplate. We move out of that deep, dark realm and up into the light. We can actually allow that to shine on us. We can actually say, I'm worth having that light shine on me. It's time for me to do that. And this entire process gets us to our final card here, which is Lena. What must be, shall be. So the skull, this is very reminiscent of Georgia O'Keeffe, and actually that came up, interestingly enough, in a recent session that I had with a client. And she did a lot of paintings of skulls, and people might think, well, that's sort of a macabre topic or subject for artwork, but in reality, this entire process of finding oneself is a series of many deaths and rebirths, if you will, right? Journeying through the darkness and into the light, and then discovering there's a little bit more darkness to go through. So I'm going to get back into that Jaguar energy and journey a little bit more. Then I'm going to climb the mountain again, and I'm going to put my head into the sun. And this reminds us that everything is birthed. We have this beautiful passion flower here at the bottom. And so there's new growth and there's birthing that comes from the letting go and the disintegration of the old. In my online community, someone posted a 6-word challenge. So we had to write a story in 6 words. And my story was, letting go is clinging and freeing, right? So anytime we're letting go of those old stories, letting go of those old experiences, deciding that we no longer want to stay there, we no longer want to live in that space, we go through a metaphorical death. We go through a grieving process. We're letting go of a person that we thought we were. We're letting go of a belief system of what we thought that we deserved or what we thought we didn't deserve, and we're stepping into this new growth, this new passion. And we start to really focus on ourselves. We become self-focused, not selfish, but self-focused. We realize that the 7 tells us there's an enormous amount of growth, an enormous amount of spiritual growth that's available to us in this process. So I want to read just a little bit about this interpretation of Lena. And I think that you'll really find this is resonating if you're going through this process of awakening and finding yourself and retrieving your soul. To give up old ways or old identities can seem frightening to the mind. Yet it is inspiring and exciting for the soul that yearns to blossom into fullness and cannot thrive when it's held back in fear. You may forget this momentarily and turn back from where you're headed out of confusion or concern. None of us have ever gone back to the same pattern, right? It may seem as though you're being asked to give up too much to secure your goals, or you may wonder if it is foolish imagination rather than a genuine soul purpose that is driving you forward. If you are a visionary with ideas that are not yet widely understood, but will help to push humanity towards the new world, you may struggle more than most. In this case, you are asked to take leaps of faith and endure the endings inherent in evolution while waiting for the signs of new life. You will have this asked of you because it's necessary for the process of creation, and most importantly, for you to have enough faith in your soul to handle it. Right? So this is about us being powerful, and resilient and visionary. We all know that we are entering now into a new era of consciousness on this planet, and everything that's just recently happened provided this spiritual awakening for so many people, billions of people at the same time. And so this requires us to do our own inner healing, our own soul retrieval, to release off and cut out with that blade, that scalpel, anything that's no longer serving us, to dive down into those shadows and slink around like the Jaguar and take care of all the things that are in there to nurture that part. And then to climb that mountain to get the higher perspective and come out into the light and bask in that and know that that is our inner state, and to celebrate these deaths and transformations. And each time we do it, it gets easier and easier, because then we start to realize, oh, this is what's happening. Nothing's going wrong here. I'm actually just letting go of that old identity and stepping into a new one. And this cycle of death and rebirth is happening at an accelerated rate now for everyone on our planet. Yesterday was the 4 portal, and it really opened. I did the global meditation, and it really just opened this entire new interconnected web of light workers and empaths across our planet. I could just feel everyone. And so when we're called to do this work individually, and we do this healing, and we retrieve our soul from all the different places where it may have gone missing, and we come back into ourselves, and we have faith that the vision we have and we hold together for a new era for our planet, an era of compassion and empathy and connection and healthy families, and living in concert with our Mother Earth and our environment, and treating all human beings as equally valuable. All of these things are possible. And it begins when we set off on this journey to find ourselves. Because when we find ourselves, and when we realize how incredibly powerful we are, this is when it ripples out into the collective. So here's a short healing that is offered for you. This is the Earth Warriors Oracle. I love these cards. They help tap into our ancestor spirits who are always there with us and holding this sacred space for us to move into this new era. You can finish with this short prayer to your own soul. My dear soul, you know what you are doing and how to grow in harmony with divine genius and my sacred purpose, even when my conscious mind does not understand. You know when I do not know. So I choose to trust you, and this brings me peace and comfort now. I trust you. Thank you, dear ones, for connecting with me. If you'd like to get more information about the work that I do, you're welcome to tap into the description box below. I put all of the different card decks that I use, and would love to see you inside the 1 Million Empaths community if you feel called to make these deep, meaningful connections with other loving, caring, empathic souls just like us. Namaste.